Good afternoon. This meeting of the Board of Education for July 24th, 2013 is called to order. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone present and to our television viewers. All items that will be voted on this afternoon have been posted as required by state law. This meeting is being televised live and will be replayed throughout the next 2 weeks, as well as streaming on our website and will be archived on our website. Please check the board website for replay times. As is typical with our midsummer meeting, we are having a brief noon meeting to vote on the business agenda. We will have general public comment at our next regular meeting on August 7th at 5 p.m. Just a note, Directors Regan and Curler are absent this afternoon, and Director Knowles will be joining us shortly. With that, we're going to move on to our first item of business, which is the Roosevelt and Franklin High School modernization. Today, the board's going to be voting on the architects for Franklin and Roosevelt High School modernization program. Superintendent Smith, would you like to introduce the item?
I would. I'd like to ask Jim Owens, who's the Executive Director of the Office of School Modernization, to come give us a brief overview, because we're at a historic moment here. So, Jim.
Thank you, Superintendent Smith, and good afternoon, board. Almost said good evening, so it's unusual doing this at
You'd be right in line with my script.
at the noon meeting. Perfect. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you about a very important milestone in terms of the bond work relative to our two of our high school projects, Roosevelt and Franklin. In your board package, you have a memorandum from staff that describes recommendations for two contract awards that are from a single solicitation, a single RFP that was issued relative to doing the planning and design work for Franklin High School and Roosevelt High School. These items are also included in the business agenda that you'll be acting upon later in the meeting. We're doing these memorandums for all of the contract award recommendations that exceed $1 million. And in the case of these two, of course, they're well above that. Hopefully it provides some additional perspective to you relative to process, some of the competition, and relative to the firms that staff have actually evaluated and are making a recommendation on. I'd like to quickly summarize the process that staff used that led to these recommendations. But we pause first to mention that we have two of our project directors present here today. We have Debbie Pearson, who's the project director for our Franklin project, and Michelle Platter, who's the project director for Roosevelt High School. Would also point out that these ladies have been extremely busy this summer, and particularly on this particular solicitation, they've spent a huge amount of time in preparation and getting us to the point that we're at. We received 7 highly qualified proposals from architect, engineer teams experienced in doing high school historic rehabilitation work in the Northwest. Using a qualification-based selection approach described in ORS and our district purchasing rules, we evaluated and scored all 7 of those proposals. In terms of doing the scoring, we also identified firms that were ranked such that they came in for interviews that we were able to conduct. We interviewed 5 firms, and of those 5, we identified 2 firms that we thought were the most qualified. And those firms are Bassetti Architects and Dowa IBI Group. Both of these firms have extensive experience doing this type of work, and we believed were the most capable firms to take this work on. As we went through the process of making the selection, we began a process to identify what the fees would be associated with this work. And so in the package and in our recommendation is a not to exceed amount that we've identified. Bassetti Architects is the firm that we've connected with the work at Roosevelt High School, and Dowa IBI Group is the firm that we'd be doing the work at Franklin High School. While we're still finalizing fee negotiations, we did identify a total of $5.8 million on Roosevelt for Bassetti and $6.5 million for Dowa on the Franklin projects. These amounts, as indicated in the memorandum, are fully in line with our budgets for these projects. Following award of these 2 contracts, assuming your approval this afternoon, staff will begin working with them on our pre-design activities, specifically our master planning work that will help frame what the full scopes of these full modernization projects are. And then they will also be heavily engaged with our community, with our design advisory groups, with staff, with building level, with community at large, and will help us put together the planning documents that we will be returning to you with in November, actually just before Thanksgiving. And in that document, we'll be laying out the master planning concept for both of these schools. Subsequently, they'll move into design phase, and we'll come back again several months later with our schematic design package. So we'll be keeping you involved in the process as we move forward. At this time, I'd like to invite any questions or comments that you might have regarding the process that we use, or questions about the procurement in general.
Director Beal?
Thank you. What do you look for when you do decide you have 6 firms? What are you? Do you go out and do you look at their work? Do you go out and look at their work, or do you look at their personality, who's easier to work with? I mean, it just seems like a difficult thing to do. What are your key areas that you looked at in order to narrow down to those two?
Thank you for the question, Director Beal. It's a process that is called qualification-based selection, and we look at different factors that relate to experience that the firms have, the approach that they take to the work, looking at the capacity that they have to take the work on. These projects are very complicated, and they involve more than just the firm that's identified in this award recommendation. These firms are really the lead architects or the prime architects. They have large teams behind them, in some cases with other architect partners, engineers, planners, and so you're looking at the full team in terms of what we believe is the firms that have the greatest qualifications. Fee is not a factor that's used in selecting firms for this type of work because of the nature of it. This is really a very creative type of effort, and so you're looking for firms that meet the criteria. In our solicitation, in our RFP, we actually identify what criteria we're looking for, and so when the firms propose on it, they're all proposing on the same information in terms of what we're looking for, what we're expecting. When we went through this process, I mentioned in my comments that all 7 of these firms were very, very highly qualified for the work, so it was a difficult decision coming down to these 2, but we were very comfortable, given the team we put together, that they're fully meeting our requirements.
Thank you.
I think the question might be off these immediate contracts in front of us, but just in terms of, at one point we were talking about sort of an overall master planning or discussion around high schools, and in addition to these specific design processes. Can you refresh my memory on where that is, or when that would happen?
Sure. Our approach to the master planning is initially for the high schools, the master planning for these 2, and then for Grant later, will connect with the follow-on design work with them. The other high schools that are in this bond for master planning only, the other 6, if you will, are all separate projects that will be moving forward with at a later time.
Okay.
There isn't a plan, for example, to do a single master planning effort for those 6 schools. Instead, we would look at doing those independently.
Okay, so for these initial meetings, I mean, obviously anyone's invited to come and just participate to see what's happening and how this process works, but it really will be specific to these individual schools.
Correct.
At this point.
Right.
But then there would be an opportunity later on as this sort of, because I'm assuming it's going to be really exciting to start simulating and thinking for folks, what could this look like? How would this translate to down the road, hopefully, at their own neighborhood high school? So it's just exciting to look forward to it. And
I would also add that part of the master planning effort involves the sequencing of the schools over
Right.
which ones would be started first, if you will.
Right.
And then the process that we would use would be very similar to what we're doing for Franklin and Roosevelt, in that we would be bringing the master plan effort forward to you. And of course, that will involve a public process to
Right.
vet the
Right.
master planning work at those individual sites. And then that work will inform us for future efforts, future bonds, et cetera.
Well, this is just incredibly exciting. To have the architects come in, that's when we can start the actual vision and planning and get beyond. It's been sort of nuts and bolts so far. and this is when they're going to really be able to help us visualize what our high schools can be. So
Mhm.
it's really exciting.
Jim, can you talk a little bit about how this connects with the EdSpec's visioning piece? Because I know that when I was at the advisory group for Franklin, there was a concern, right, that we'd build one kind of high school in one part of town and entirely different because they didn't see the connection between the processes. So can you talk about how they'll link and what are some examples maybe they might have in common?
Right. Certainly, again, a great question. Relative to the work that we're doing, this is all very much about alignment, and it goes back to the district strategic framework for modern infrastructure. It connects to the work that was done about a year and a half ago to update our district long-range facilities plan. It connects to the work that we're currently doing on our education specifications. The work that you're about to see here, I think at the August 7th meeting, will be a summary of the community conversations, the facilities visioning document that will describe what the vision is in our classrooms, in our schools. The subsequent document, the phase 2 portion of that work, is the actual EdSpec itself, which will describe programmatically what the high school's configuration looks like, what the middle schools, what the K-8s and the K-5s look like. And it'll be a document that'll summarize really the physical aspects of the schools. The team that we have working on that, again, happens to be Dowa IBI Group, unrelated to this recommendation. But Dowa is working vigorously right now on the phase 2 effort, and we're starting with the high schools because the connection with the EdSpec for the high school configuration, the comprehensive high school configuration, will be very important to inform the design team for Franklin and Roosevelt. So we're anticipating, staff has some initial drafts that we're looking at that'll help frame what the scope of that work will be. And so as we continue our conversations with you, I think you'll see how that connects with these two projects.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to move on to our second and last item on the business agenda today, which is the business agenda. We'll now consider the business agenda. Ms. Patterson, are there any changes to our business agenda?
Yes, there are. On Resolution 4784, expenditure contracts, we are removing for this meeting the alternative education contracts that are listed after the Bassetti Architects contract. This is on page 2 and 3 of your business agenda.
Okay. So that'd be Portland Youth Builders, Mount Scott Learning Center, NEA, Pathfinders, PCC, Rosemary Anderson, Youth Employment Institute, Youth Progress Association, and Open Meadows.
Correct.
Thank you. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt the business agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Director Atkins moves, Director Knowles seconds the adoption of the business agenda. Ms. Patterson, is there any public comment on the agenda?
There is not.
Okay. Is there any board discussion on the business agenda? Director Buell?
The Columbia Regional Program, that's on this too? I mean, I've got 3 pages. Is that right? Charlie? That's part of it, the State of Oregon Department of Education Columbia
Yes.
Regional Program.
Yes, so those remain in Resolution 4785. Those remain on the business agenda
Okay.
as part of Resolution 4785.
Could somebody just say what that is? It's only $18 million I'm voting on. It'd be nice if I knew what it was.
And actually, I'm going to ask Sue Ann to come on up and do a brief, do you want to come up and talk a little bit about what Columbia Regional programs are? Or I'll do you a brief statement. So we, Portland Public Schools actually serves as the coordinating body for, I think it's 27 different districts where we provide services for low incidence, high needs students for all of those districts. So we effectively serve a similar function to an education service district and coordinate all of those services, which is our Columbia Regional programs. So we have contracts with a lot of other districts to provide those services.
Thank you.
And a good one for you to go, actually go tour, because it's pretty exceptional what kind of services we provide.
Yeah, I would recommend speaking with
Robbie Weber, who coordinates, who's the director of those services.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions? Business agenda? Oh, sorry. Yeah, Director Review.
Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission, can somebody explain what we're doing there?
Sorry, get me to
It's the
read.
Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission.
Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission provides grants to a number of different entities, and some of the grants that they've provided to us have been ones that are about enhancing our ability to use technology in the district, and it's generally one that requires us to do matching, and so this one in particular is benefiting Franklin and Madison, and digital transformation projects. So they're actually comprehensive but project-specific grants that are enhancing our student use of technology. So, but it's a grant program, so we're receiving
But we
dollars on this
pay-
one.
We're receiving dollars, but we're also paying equal amounts.
Not necessarily equal amounts, but it's one where we
Some
have to have
amount.
skin in the game in order to receive the dollars from them. But it's basically capacity building grants from Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission. They've been a big piece of our iPad grant over at Roosevelt that's allowed us to do the student iPad technology rollout, and this is an expansion of that, using personal digital devices.
Are they doing, so at Madison, we're not going to start giving people iPads, or is that a different thing?
You know what, so this is their individual digital devices, and actually, Melissa, come on up.
So the 4 grants that we're working with Mount Hood Cable, I think Carol really touched on well. The 3 schools that are directly impacted, Roosevelt, Madison, and Franklin, all are a different one-to-one technology rollout. So Roosevelt, we're completing our one-to-one iPad technology rollout that Mount Hood Cable Commission helped us begin. At Madison and Franklin, we're doing a one-to-one iPad rollout for their 9th grade this school year. And then the digital transformation project is really working with our online learning and how are we expanding student access across all of our schools, but particularly within our online learning program.
The online learning, which consists of?
So online learning consists of a certified teacher who is working with students in an online setting. So students may or may not be within the classroom with the teacher at that time, but we devise our online learning programs so that the teacher to student ratio is the same as at our buildings.
And they're learning online about what?
They're learning online about various subjects. So if you have students, for example, we have students who often are learning in an alternative setting and may or may not have expanded access to different courses that it's more difficult to provide with fewer number of teachers, with a smaller number of teachers, so students are accessing through that. We also have the opportunity for students who are working during the regular day and are taking online classes later in the day or at different times than we typically have available for students to learn.
So they take these online classes on their iPad?
They can, but we're not doing the iPad rollout through this online technology grant. This is really, the digital transformation project is really creating the structure so students, so teachers can share lesson plans with each other so that they're able to upload and create lesson plans that are engaging and interactive for students. We don't currently have platforms that work well for that, so that's what the digital transformation project is really
Is that
focused
part
on.
of this new synergy stuff?
It's not, but it will connect with that. So part of our commitment is some of that work around synergy. Makes sense?
Thank you, I guess.
Any other questions?
Okay. Any other questions?
Actually, I will just say Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission has done a huge, they've been a great partner in really building our technology capacity, because these are things we would not have been able to do without a partner helping us do that. So, and it is the place that is the best use of outside grants, is building our capacity, not paying for staff, but building capacity that, that leaves us with something after the partnership is done. So that's really been the purpose of that.
Could I ask another question, Superintendent? Thank you. Is this, how does this connect up with coming tests and testing in the labs where we closed down the labs for a long period of time. I was talking to a teacher the other day, they closed down the labs for 3 months in their school, which is a long time to close down your computer lab. So is this connected? Is this helping, or is this, how does this connect up with that? Because that's a serious problem, I guess.
Any additional technology should help alleviate that problem. Part of the impact of having a one-to-one system is that we can use that technology however we want. So what we don't want to do is be purchasing technology for the purpose of assessing kids online. That's not why we make the investment. However, if we have one-to-one technology available, it does mean that those labs that can be used in alternate ways, which perhaps have a different capacity, such as engineering courses, we are able to use those for those courses. And the way that the current assessment systems are being designed, beginning with the Smarter Balanced Assessment, they're being designed so they can be delivered via iPad. So we should be able to use this new technology in both ways. And so our priority number one is to use it for learning. And then if we're able to actually have greater access to technology during those assessment times, that's a great benefit for us, because it is a problem.
So I've had people ask me this question or make this comment, that how do we track the iPads that kids get?
So
Do
all
they take, can they take them home? Can they do with them whatever they want?
Yeah, so we're working on that. I would say as a district, we're on a gradual release model of figuring out how to best make sure that the kids have access to iPads 24 hours a day. Ideally, we will get to the point where iPads are treated just like textbooks are, which is that they are used as a material that kids get at the beginning of the year and check out for the entire year and have freedom to bring home or back at school. We've learned a lot through the Roosevelt rollout and working with Mount Hood Cable Commission in analyzing what's been successful and what hasn't been successful. So IT actually has put in place, and they did this at the outset of the rollout at Roosevelt, but an ability to track whose iPad is with whom, right? Which iPad is assigned to which student. We had originally at Roosevelt had a check-in, check-out policy, which was using a great deal of staff time to track that technology. It was a huge amount of investment of staff just for the check-in, check-out of the iPads. So we've really been evaluating that as we move forward into the second year to figure out what will be the best way to give students the technology that they need and not have staff time spent on checking out devices, but spent on learning.
Sometimes, what do we predict is the shelf life of the iPads
That-
themselves? For instance, I mean, like a textbook, about 7 years, and we buy new ones.
Right.
iPad,
I don't know the answer to that. That would be a great question for the technology department. I don't know if there's someone here from IT. We do know that the technology cycles through fairly quickly, so 3 to 4 years is a typical refresh for IT. We have not refreshed our technology at that rate, however. As we think about textbook adoptions and that 7-year process, I see, along with my peers in other districts within Oregon and outside Oregon, that we are likely shifting away from a 7-year physical textbook adoption into open educational resource where we're actually honoring the work of teachers in being able to both access the curriculum that teachers develop internally within a district and externally outside of the district, which would change the way we look at long-term purchases and it would assist us in that we may be shifting dollars from investing in textbooks every year to looking at, okay, so how do we look at IT refresh through a one-to-one technology purchase?
so at Madison High School, you have a group of teachers who are sitting down and saying, we need these iPads?
Yeah.
And they are a body that meets regularly to assess the technology in the school?
Exactly.
And it's chosen by whom?
The technology is chosen by whom?
No, the committee that's doing the assessing of the technology is chosen by whom?
Well, it's the entire 9th grade advisory team, so it's including special education as a part of that team. And so that team works together along with Santha Cassell and Petra Callan around, is the technology working well for us? Which technology do we want? How do we want it to be used? How are we using it for kids? And then whether or not it's working
So
well.
if I went out someday to Madison High School, I could sit down with that team theoretically, and I would say, you really wanted these iPads, and they'd say, yes, we really, it was part of our plan, or is this something that came from the district down to Madison?
I believe that when you went out to Madison, you would find teachers that said, absolutely, we're so excited to have this.
Okay, thank you very much. for-
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. The board will now vote on the business agenda. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Business agenda is approved by a vote of 5-0, with Student Representative Davidson voting
Yes.
yes. The next meeting of the board will be held Wednesday, August 7th, 2013, at 5 p.m. here in the board auditorium. The regular meeting of the board is now adjourned.